Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're on chapter 9 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. The title of the talk is Unity and Diversity, or is it Unity in Diversity? Does someone have the book that can say? Is it Unity and Diversity or Unity in Diversity?
Unity in diversity.
In diversity, as in inside.
Unity in Diversity, okay. I knew that my memory was a little flawed there. So, before we begin, are there any questions that anyone has or any comments that anyone would like to make about what has been said so far?
I want to clarify one, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
Where we left off, the last few lines, do not think that good and evil are two separate essences, for they are one and the same thing, appearing in different degrees and in different guises, and producing differences of feeling in the same mind. What I thought of was, it's like a half glass full or half glass empty attitude. Is that correct? Am I thinking it's?
Absolutely, dear. That's one good way of having a metaphor for it.
Yeah, I was thinking.
That unity,
yes,
is what is behind, according to Vedanta, according to Vivekananda. So there cannot be two. There can only be a spectrum.
Yes.
So as you said, are we seeing the glass half full, or are we seeing the glass half empty? If we're seeing it half empty, that could be analogized to all of the negative or evil things.
Mm-hmm.
If we're seeing it half full, it could be analogized to all the positive and beneficent things.
Okay, just one.
So I'll read again what you just said.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Just wanted to
Vedanta says, do not think that good and evil are two separate essences. Notice the word essences. For they are one and the same thing, appearing in different degrees and in different guises, and producing differences of feeling in the same mind. Now, this essence, if we think about the essence of a freshly cut watermelon, it's delightful. Just has this wonderful scent, this wonderful thing. But if we leave that watermelon out for a while, that same watermelon turns to something nasty, and the essence of it changes. So they are one and the same thing. They're not two separate essences. The essence simply changes. And so it's when we talk about our minds, we have these likes and dislikes, these attractions and aversions. Well, it's because we're not seeing the unity behind. So the first thought of the Vedanta in the finding of unity in the external, the one existence manifesting itself, however different it may appear in manifestation. So the first thought of the Vedanta is the finding of unity in the external, the one existence manifesting itself, however different it may appear in manifestation. Think of the old crude theory of the Persians. Two gods creating this world, the good God doing everything that is good, and the bad one everything bad. On the very face of it, you see the absurdity. For if it be carried out, every law of nature must have two parts, one of which is manifested by one God, and then he goes away and the other God manipulates the other part. There the difficulty comes that both are working in the same world, and these two gods keep themselves in harmony by injuring one portion and doing good to the other. This is a crude case, of course, the crudest way of expressing the duality of existence. But take the more advanced, the more abstract theory that this world is partly good and partly bad. This also is absurd, arguing from the same standpoint. It is the law of unity that gives us our food, and it is the same law that kills many through accidents or misadventure. Any further comment or question about this unity of existence, that there is not two existences, a good existence and a bad existence that are somehow commingled, but only one that appears differently in manifestation.
Could this be the example of Hiranyakasipa, who gets the boon from Shiva and at the same time gets killed by Narasimhavatara because he couldn't get killed no matter with human or animal. So God had to create himself into two in one and then kills him. Could this be the example, Brother Shankara?
Well, I think that's an example, Haima, but
It's a metaphor.
there's a lot of mythology involved in that.
That's right.
That we can't go into right now.
No, sure.
But of course there must be the unity behind.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone? Anything to add or ask?
He says these two gods keep themselves in harmony by injuring one portion and doing good to another. Does that mean one God injures and one does good?
Yeah, that's the old idea that he's talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
It's based in the same idea as the old Zoroastrian idea. There being more than one God, the good God and the bad God, and they're constantly at war with one another. We find that finds its way into the way Christianity is taught, though Christ didn't say anything whatsoever about that. I mean, he taught that there was the tempter, the accuser. But if you look into the theology of the Hebrews, you find that that is an aspect of God, as it is pointed out in Job, the book of Job. It's just an aspect of the one God.
Hi. But if it's all Brahman, then where do gods, like two gods, come from? They are also part.
There are not. You mean where do two gods come from, good and bad?
Yes, I mean if it's all.
They come from our minds. They come from reasoning human beings. Brahman alone is. So, but human beings, because we don't know that, we try to figure things out. And we see there's both good things and evil things in the world. And one primitive idea, as Vivekananda is saying, is that there are different deities responsible for each of those things. This is what's in Zoroastrianism, and this is the fundamentalist Christian idea of God and the devil, which, as is pointed out in the book of Job, the devil, or the accuser as he's called, is no more than an aspect of God who acts by permission of God.
But you're saying there's no real God, it's all creation, it's all our own creation. The good God and the bad God.
What do you mean by real, Sumesh? What do you mean by real?
See, I'm not like the good God and the bad God who are, doing, one is, doing good things and the other is doing, bad things. So is there such thing, or that's our
No, that doesn't exist. That's what Vivekananda is saying. It's an absurd idea.
Okay, got it.
It is the one divine presence that appears in either form as it seems to the human mind. We are limited in our ability to understand by our ignorance. So Vivekananda is trying to eliminate our ignorance or dispel our ignorance. But what it says in the Chandi about the divine feminine, the creator energy, the divine mother, what it says is, and this is Brahma, her son, her mind-born son, addressing her. He says, "O mother, you are the great Devi as also the great Asuri. You are both in one. And as such, you have children who are elevated souls, and you have children who are degraded souls, asuras. Those beings who, by definition, hate righteousness. But it is one mother, and she gives birth to these many children, but she treats them the same way after they have finished their role in manifestation. She takes them to the higher realms. O mother, don't you kill asuras don't you reduce asuras to ashes by mere sight? Yet you direct your weapons against them, so that even the inimical ones, purified by the missiles, may attain the higher worlds. Such is your most kindly intention toward them." And in our Tuesday night class, we just have been studying that manifestation as it appeared in Sri Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother, who was very clear that she was the mother of the wicked and the demented, as well as the sane and the good. So this is what the Swami is saying. This all exists on a spectrum. Brahmananda once said, Swami Brahmananda Rakal, Raja Maharaj once said, "Show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins." He could just as easily have said, show me the line of demarcation where the realm of evil begins or ends and the world of good begins. There is no line of demarcation. There's the extreme at one end and the extreme at the other, and in the middle there's the gray. The very dark at one end, the very bright at the other, and in the middle, shades of gray. So does that get it, Somesh? Is that
Yes. That answers.
okay? Very good.
Okay.
Brother
Anything
Shan-
else? Yes, dear.
Yeah, I don't know if my question is quite relevant to what we're talking about, but how do we explain that our whole physiology as a human being is sort of inbuilt to distinguish between the good and the bad, or the pleasant and the unpleasant? I mean, we get different reactions when we see something pleasant or beautiful versus what we think is.
This is what will be talked about on Sunday and where we had to leave off last Sunday. It is a result of it being made of the gunas. Your body, your mind, that which appears to be Swayam is a product, as is everything else within manifestation, is a product of the gunas. So we have these five organs of action, 5 organs of perception. We have the manas, the mind, that these organs of action and perception deliver information to, and the mind makes of it the best what it can based on its level of ignorance. So the physiology of a human being is a result of it being a product of tamas, rajas, and sattva, and the 5 elements that they produce. So you may be a more fiery person, you may be a more earthy person, you may be a more air-like person, you may be a more ethereal person, you may be a more fluid or water-like person. This is represented in the astrology of the world's cultures. Earth signs, air signs, fire signs, water signs.
So,
Does that make that more clear?
yes, it does. So can the proportion of the combination change by spiritual practice? Is that?
Absolutely. This is what Krishna says over and over in the Gita. If you practice that which is sattvic, you become more sattvic. It's a matter of vibration. All of these things are vibration. As you practice that which is more sattvic, the very nature of the cells of your body change. They become more sattvic. Because the vibration of sattva, or tanmatra, as the Sanskrit is. The tanmatra of sattva is more predominant in you. And then we have to be careful because each of the three gunas has its it's a spectrum also. As it's said in the Gita, the difficulty with sattva is once you emphasize it enough, it will cause you to seek happiness and knowledge. So that's not the goal. The goal is beyond happiness and knowledge. Very good question, Swayam, and very relevant.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Well,
I have a
we'll
perspective.
see. We'll see.
Okay. Okay. I was having a debate with my atheist friend. He's one of my best friends. He's an atheist.
Mhm,
And he was making the argument for moral relativism,
mhm.
based on this idea of a spectrum and the gray. And I kept arguing that Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna were not moral relativists, that they were quite absolute in their morality, because God is the light beyond light and darkness. God is the good beyond good and evil. And I was wondering what your perspective on that debate between me and my friend is.
Well, in this case, Anshu, it would have to be said that you are mistaken. That their renunciation was absolute, but they both very much recognized moral relativity. For example, when that delegation of gentlemen from Calcutta who had seen that their sons were being influenced by Sri Ramakrishna toward renunciation, they came, and their spokesman, they were all men, their spokesman said to Sri Ramakrishna, "Tell us, why should we not enjoy the world?" And Sri Ramakrishna said, "Go, enjoy the world. I have no objection. But when you are sick of it, return to me. I have the cure." The cure, of course, is renunciation. So both Sri Ramakrishna, as a matter of fact, Vivekananda strongly argues for moral relativism, that there is no such thing as absolute morality. What is good in one situation may be evil in another, and vice versa. But, he says, if you wish to go beyond good and evil, then you must renounce them both. You must renounce this moral relativity. You must renounce, but it's not a moral absolutism. Yes, Sri Ramakrishna, when he was young, and he freely admitted later that this had been in ignorance. He swore up and down that you should not steal so much as a leaf of watercress from the pond. Or he slapped the Rani Rasmani, slapped her in the face because she was in the shrine with him. And instead of worshiping the mother, was hoping that her presence there in Sri Ramakrishna's prayers would help her win a lawsuit. Sri Ramakrishna at that time as I said, he slapped her in the face. He later came to see that as a mistaken way to behave, and that human beings could not be held to that kind of standard. Is that clear?
So, yeah, that was very enlightening. Thank you. So what would Ramakrishna and Vivekananda's perspective be on slavery and casteism and all these social ills like hunger? Would they not want us to alleviate them? Isn't that
Of
not a moral
course they would.
position?
Of course they would. But not out of some moral compulsion. Not out
Oh,
of
okay.
some moral compulsion, out of compassion and understanding that the real good is what is done to you by purifying you of your selfishness. As you become more selfless by offering yourself to others, offering who you are and what you have to others, you are purifying yourself and becoming more selfless. But Sri Ramakrishna, if you remember, I forget the rich gentleman's name, but it was one of his rich disciples, came to him and said he wanted to build hospitals and clinics and dig wells and build roads and all these things. And Sri Ramakrishna said, first realize God, then you'll know what to do with your wealth. First realize God. First dispel your ignorance. And that, of course, is, if there is an imperative, that's it. As Vivekananda said, each soul is potentially divine. That doesn't mean maybe or maybe not. No, it just means there's the potential is there, like energy is in a battery. If we just see a battery and we don't know what it is, we would have no idea there's energy in it. Well, that divinity exists within you. And when you hook up the electrodes of your spiritual practice, the divinity begins to flow out and change things. So each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest that divinity. Do this by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, one or more or all of these, and be free. All else, and then he goes through the list of all of the things that are associated with the outward aspects of spiritual practice. All these things, he said, are secondary details. So if there is an imperative, and it isn't really an imperative because of what Sri Ramakrishna said to those gentlemen, go enjoy the world. What is one of the first things we read in the gospel? You have come to the mango grove, eat the mangoes. So any fierce dogmatism about morality is mistaken.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
You're more than welcome, dear. That was, as you can see, that was not a quick question. It was a very profound question, and it goes to the root of what we're up to, why we gather here on a Wednesday evening, to learn that which dispels our ignorance. Anything else from anyone? This is priceless. This is just exactly it. Okay, going on with Vivekananda. We find then that this world is neither optimistic nor pessimistic. It is a mixture of both. And as we go on, we shall find that the whole blame is taken away from nature and put upon our own shoulders. What? This isn't imposed on me? No, no. We are that. We are the divine being that has brought this about. As we go on, we shall find that the whole blame is taken away from nature and put upon our own shoulders. At the same time, the Vedanta shows the way out. In other words, to take that burden off your shoulders, but not by denial of evil, because it enslaves bodily the fact. It enslaves what? I'm sorry.
Analysis.
I got it, dear. Vedanta shows the way out, but not by denial of evil, because it analyzes boldly the fact as it is and does not seek to conceal anything. It is not hopeless. It is not agnostic. It finds out a remedy, but it wants to place that remedy on adamantine foundations, not by shutting the child's mouth and blinding the eyes with something which is untrue and which the child will find out in a few days. I remember when I was young, Vivekananda says, I remember when I was young, a young man's father died and left him poorly off with a large family to support. And he found that his father's friends were unwilling to help him. He had a conversation with a clergyman who offered this consolation. Oh, it is all good. All is sent for our good. That is the old method of trying to put a piece of gold leaf on an old sore. It is a confession of weakness, of absurdity. The young man went away, and 6 months afterwards, a son was born to the clergyman, and he gave a Thanksgiving party to which the young man was invited. The clergyman prayed, "Thank God for his mercies." And the young man stood up and said, "Stop, this is all misery." The clergyman asked, "Why?" "Because when my father died, you said it was good, though apparently evil. So now this is apparently good, but it is really evil. Is this the way to cure the misery of the world? Be good and have mercy on those who suffer. Do not try to patch it up." So there you are, Anshu. Is this the way to cure the misery of the world? Be good and have mercy on those who suffer. Do not try to patch it up. Nothing will cure this world. Go beyond it. So as long as we're in this world, embodied beings, we benefit by being compassionate. Why? Because it decreases our selfishness. It increases our selflessness. If we serve others as the divine, serve Jiva as Shiva, if we serve others as the divine, even though in the beginning we don't really know the meaning of what's being done, we say, all right, this is what Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda said. If we do that, we slowly and slowly, this is karma yoga, we slowly and slowly dispel our selfishness. As we dispel our selfishness, we find we're no longer adversarial with the world. I, me, mine is replaced by thou, thee, thine. And there is a great relief. So, does anyone have any comments or questions about what the Swami means? Nothing will cure this world. Go beyond it. Okay? This is a world of good and evil. Wherever there is good, evil follows. But beyond and behind all these manifestations, all these contradictions, the Vedanta finds out that unity. It says, give up what is evil and give up what is good. Now, in practical terms, this means such things as giving up our likes and dislikes. We like what seems good to us, and we dislike that which seems painful and evil to us. Renounce them both, is what he's saying. Give up what is evil and give up what is good. What remains then? Beyond good and evil stands something which is yours, the real you, beyond every evil and beyond every good too. And it is that which is manifesting itself as good and bad. That's why the Swami said, you find that the responsibility is not nature's, but it is your own. It is that which is manifesting itself as good and bad. Know that first, and then alone will be and then alone you will be a true optimist, and not before. For then you will be able to control everything. Control these manifestations, and you will be at liberty to manifest the real you. First, be master of yourself. Stand up and be free. Go beyond the pale of these laws, for these laws do not absolutely govern you. They are only part of your being. First, find out that you are not the slave of nature, never were and never will be, that this nature, infinite as you may think it, is only finite, is only finite, a drop in the ocean. That is your perception of it. And your soul is the ocean. You are beyond the stars, the sun, and the moon. They are like mere bubbles compared with your infinite being. Know that, and you will control both good and evil. Then alone the whole vision will change, and you will stand up and say, how beautiful is good, and how wonderful is evil. Any comments or questions? Anything to add or ask?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the key point being know that first, and then alone, you will be a true optimist, and so on and so forth. But it is so difficult or challenging to know that first. Sometimes it seems like a catch-22. Without knowing Brahman, it's difficult to see the unity. But in order to realize Brahman, we have to see the unity. How do you sort of work with that?
Excuse me. Swayam, it seems to us like this human life is a long time. In fact, in the life of our true being, it is just a blink. But in that blink, we can begin and sustain and realize the fruits of a spiritual practice. You have begun. Many of the others on the screen here have begun or are well along. It's not a catch-22. I understand how it seems that way. But I'll tell that story again of Swami Prabhavananda and Swami Turiyananda, and Swami Prabhavananda studying with Swami Turiyananda the Vivekachudamani, Adi Shankaracharya's workbook for Advaita Vedanta. Early in the book, Shankaracharya lists the qualifications of a student, of a student who is fit to study the Vedanta. Swami Prabhavananda read all this with Swami Turiyananda, and the Swami said, go home and think on that. And so Prabhavananda came back the next time they were to study together, and he said, well, it seems to me, Turiyanandaji, that if you have achieved everything that makes you a qualified student, you have reached the goal. And Turiyananda smiled and said, ah, I see you have solved the puzzle. We become fit for the knowledge of Brahman, and we don't know when this will happen. We have no idea. By relentless, dedicated spiritual practice. As we do that spiritual practice, we replace all forms of tamas, not that tamas doesn't exist anymore within us, but we replace its manifestations in us by a high form of rajas. That is to say, we replace lower forms of samskara, those that we brought with us into this embodiment, with higher forms of samskara. Slowly and slowly, that transforms us into someone who can sustain this practice. We can use that energy of projection to project on the screen of our awareness what it is we wish to be and move toward it. So then we begin to replace the samskaras of rajas with the samskaras of the revealing power. Actually, we've been doing it all along, but it becomes more apparent to us that we are replacing the mental impressions, samskaras, the mental impressions of rajas, with those of sattva, the revealing power. How do we see this? We see because we understand better what we read. We understand better what we discover as we contemplate, concentrate, and practice meditation. It becomes clear to us. It is a slow process from one perspective. And Sri Krishna in the Gita is very clear, sour toil at first, and then nectar. So we set our own priorities. It's not a catch-22. We set our own priorities. I am weary of the life of the world, of this embodiment business. I am weary of this embodiment business. And so, as Sri Ramakrishna says, I have the cure. I will take his cure. And what does he say about his cure? He says it can work in this lifetime. He says the old methods in this time are too slow. And at the time that he was alive, there was something for curing diseases called Dr. Gupta's mixture. The old Ayurvedic ways, he said, are too slow. We need Dr. Gupta's mixture. Which apparently worked on a lot of things. So his spiritual treasure and that of Holy Mother and Vivekananda and Raja Maharaj, I mean, it's all the same medicine that is delivered through the four of them, works quickly. But only if you take the medicine essentially every day. Is that clear? And are there any follow-up questions from anybody about what was said?
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thank you for patiently explaining this over and over when I ask the question in different ways. Thank you.
Dear heart, there's no impatience whatsoever about saying this over and over in different ways. No impatience whatsoever. It's a joy to rehearse these things. So any follow-up questions to what Swayam asked and or any comments to make about what she asked and what was said in response?
Was it Ramakrishna who said, old Ayurvedic ways are too slow, we need Dr. Gupta's medicine? Was that?
That's exactly right, yes. You'll find that in the gospel relatively early on.
And to us,
He's explaining to him what it is he's trying to teach him and why the old ways that M is so familiar with as a Brahmin, why he's familiar with all of these things. They're too slow.
And Dr. Gupta's mixture, that's the taking the name of God and meditating twice a day and reading the scriptures. Is that correct? That's the medicine. That's the cure.
Whatever it is that your guru gave you,
Mhm.
that was Dr. Gupta's mixture for you.
Okay.
Whatever your guru told you to do, and as we read the gospel and we read these other things, we get reminded of the instructions. And yes, Sri Ramakrishna said, the most auspicious and fastest way now is to take the name of the Lord, repeat the name of the Lord, and the seed words or bijas associated with that in the form of a mantra, and gaze on a picture of himself, Holy Mother. I mean, he wasn't being immodest. He wasn't saying, I'm the one. No, it's just that he gathered together the spiritual treasure and has it to offer to us. What does Vivekananda say? If we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt. And I'm just going to pause to say, he can share that. He can share all of this with us. He can share that triumph over fear and doubt. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills a hoofprint in the clay. Thanks, Brahmadas. Yes.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Sumesh.
Yes. I have a comment about not what Swamiji asked on what you commented, but what you read, that do not try to patch it up. Nothing will cure this world. Go beyond it. Does it mean that actually, the thing we cure is something that is not working fine, or that is something is wrong? That there is nothing wrong. It's like, there's, that's the way world is. We go beyond our judgment, and there's no need to cure. Is that what it means?
Well, there's no need to cure the world because you can't.
Or maybe there's no need to cure.
You can cure your addiction to it if you wish. We are addicted to the world. We created this addiction for ourselves.
Yeah.
We, as the divine being, said, in the simple love of being and doing, I am one, I shall become many. And so in that manyness, we have become lost. It's like Saint Teresa of Avila said, it is only in us it is only in us that God becomes so confused that he asks questions. And so here we sit asking questions and finding answers. And so if one doesn't see anything that needs curing, then indeed there's nothing that needs curing.
Yeah.
If indeed you are weary of the world and think, I really do not want, if I take this idea seriously, that if I leave this world still wanting something from the world, then I will come back here. This is the idea of reincarnation, which is universally taught in the East and was even taught in Christianity until AD 300, when the Council of Nicaea said it wasn't a good idea anymore. So this idea of returning to human form, if that's what you wish, then live the best life you can according to the rules prescribed. And they're very clearly laid out in the Karma Kanda. Live the best life you can. Go to whatever swarga that earns you. And when the merit is exhausted, then your desire to continue embodiment will bring you back.
Mm.
And as Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, if you've done well, you will be born in a good family, and things will be, relatively good for you. Will they be perfect? Of course not. That's not the nature of this world. So do we wish to be free of embodiment or not?
Mm-hmm.
Do we wish to be led from death to immortality or not? And there's absolutely no imperative. It's not a dogma.
Mm-hmm.
It's not wrong to want to be alive. How could it possibly be wrong? We, as the divine being, did it out of the sheer love of being and doing and creating. It's not wrong. It's just after some time, it's very troublesome. Enough already.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sumesh, for asking that, for pursuing it that way.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing is that it says that, I just want to read it. Behind good and evil stands something which is yours, the real you, beyond every evil and beyond every good too. And it is that which is manifesting itself as good and bad. So it is our judgment of good and bad. That's what it is. There's nothing such.
No. It is,
Okay.
You are that which is manifesting the good and the evil. Then you judge or not judge as you see fit. But it is you, by your very nature of manifestation. The very nature of manifestation is duality. What is standing behind the manifestation is the real you of which I was speaking. The divine being. That is your true nature. That's what Vivekananda is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't a question of our mind. Our mind is just an artifact. Our mind is just a serial processor. Mm-hmm. Really, that's all it is. We get so hooked on dancing with our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, no problem. Enjoy it as you please. But that's all it is. It's an exitless maze. It is an exitless maze, the mind. There is no way out. The way out is to go beyond the mind, go beyond the five senses, beyond the five organs of action. And this is what Vivekananda is driving at. To find what it is that is manifesting all this, which in Samkhya terms is called the ahamkara, the I maker. There's only one. There's only one. One, one, one. Every embodiment that appears on the screen here and all the millions that are around us are all projections, reflections of that one. Thou art that thou art. That's what Vivekananda says is standing behind the manifestation of good and evil. And of all duality, pleasure and pain, and sweet and sour, all of it, all the dualities, wealth and poverty.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
does Swami mean that we are creating through our perception, it's good, it's bad? That's what he is. Is that what he's telling us? Go beyond that.
He's saying you're creating it.
We are creating on our own.
Not just the judgment. You're creating the very fact of what appears to be good and that which appears to be evil.
Okay.
Then we judge it with our left serial processor.
Sure.
We judge it as this is good, this is evil. What do we mean by that?
Exactly.
I like it, I don't like it.
It's our perception.
I think it's good for the world, I think it's bad for the world. I think it's good for me, I think it's bad for me.
Thank you.
It's pleasant, it's unpleasant. It's all that's meant by good and evil. But we are that which is manifesting this duality because it pleases us.
Okay. That's what I wanted.
As Swami Sarvapriyananda said at the end of a class that ended in March of 2016 in Hollywood Monastery in California, I was, by the grace of Mother, there for that class. He explained the absolute highest flights of Vedanta. He defeated every other argument about there being any possibility of anything else but the one, the non-dual, the Advaita. At the end of the class, he said, well, let's meet one more time next week. All right, we met. And when he came forward that morning, he said, well, we have heard all this. We have learned all this. We have processed all this. And yet, which of us has changed? Why not? Why haven't we changed? And then he held up his own hand and said, we have to admit it's because we like it. We have to admit it's because we like it. As we come to this position of not liking it and making it a priority to escape, as Swami Prabhavananda once said when someone accused him of preaching escapism, he said, well, that may be true, but I cannot for the life of me think why I would not want to escape. If we decide we want to escape, then as Sri Ramakrishna, who never insists, will never push. He just invites, he says, when you are sick of it, when you are sick of liking it, come to me, I have the cure.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I have something to share,
Please
and
do, dear.
I want to first give appreciation for this group, because within the last week I've been challenged with feeling low, because I had made judgment upon, just saw myself. Well, I didn't know why I was feeling low, and then it was revealed to me, and because I was looking at things that people were doing in the world, and feeling uh, uh, low because of it, and also so judging, because I was defining it something as good or bad, or sin or sinlessness. And so on the last few days with the group sharing, I then was guided to read A Course in Miracle. It was a lesson in A Course in Miracles, and it was just right on point. I hadn't picked up the book in a while, but I picked up where I left off, and it was the lesson. And the lesson said, if you see your brother, this basically it says, if you see the sin in your brother, then it prevents you, and you can't look beyond, quote unquote, his sins, and see the self, the big self, the divinity of him in him, then you won't be able to see it in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, that just hit me right on.
Mm-hmm.
And then it spoke about, it says that you have faith in sin, and that hit me too. It's like, the faith to me means to indicate a belief. And so I said I could either be believing in sin, or I could be believing in sinlessness. And so I had never had that thought before. And when I understood that I could either look and see what people are doing and judge it, or have more compassion and seeing what that motivates me to do,
Mm-hmm.
that was very, very helpful to me, because it just released all judgment, and with people sharing on here, and then seeing the faces, it's like I saw us as one and the same. Everybody is one and the same. We call people, the victim and the victors, victim and victimizers, but I say, we're all looking for the same thing, and that is to know thyself. And so, in us being able to respond to help, because somebody asked, okay, you see things happening, and how do you respond? And so now I think you're either responding out of judgment, or you're responding in a way, it's okay, what can I do? You're responding from a consciousness of out of the big self, as opposed to looking at something as somebody's doing something wrong. It's like, okay, what can I do? Not judging, but from a place of compassion, to assist in 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 educating or changing or helping the situation. But it just put me in a position where, okay, just like I want to know my big self, everybody does too, and I think that's what we're all seeking. And I don't want anything to block my seeing my big self, the divinity in me. And so that was just a very powerful lesson. And for me. And I appreciate the group for being a catalyst in helping me to get to that point. I just wanted to share that.
Well, Katrina, I think I can speak for the whole group in saying thank you for being so trusting and open as to share what you just did. Yes, as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you spot it, you got it. So when we see the faults in others, we block. We immediately block our being able to see the divine being within ourselves and within the other. So thank you for that sharing, and thank you for being the person that you are that stays with this and lets these things happen. As anyone who's thoughtful will tell you, there's no such thing as coincidence, only synchronicity. So the fact that you picked up that book that you hadn't picked up for a while, the Course in Miracles book, and read what you needed to read, perfect. So yes, this group exists to help us each go further, go further. And what does it mean to go forward, to go further, to dispel our ignorance? Thank you, Katrina. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
So I was listening to this panel discussion on adversity, resilience, and yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the panelists was Swami Atma Priyananda.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about...
Do you mean Sarva Priyananda or Atma Priyananda?
Atma Priyananda, one of the
Atma
Swamis in India.
Oh, okay. Very good.
And he sort of quoted Einstein, and I may not be re-quoting it exactly right, but something about you cannot solve a problem by being in the problem.
No,
So
you cannot solve a problem with the mind that created it.
that created it.
That's
And
what Einstein said.
right. And then he went on to talk about looking on life as an adventure. And you have said it many times that we are not human beings having a divine experience, but divine beings having a human experience.
Yes.
And so in that regard, if we think of life as an adventure, whether we came as a Ferrari or a Honda or a second-hand car, we'll still have an adventure.
Yes. And by the way, it's much easier to take care of a Honda than it is a Ferrari.
That's true.
Much easier and much less expensive. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Swayam. Well, that's exactly it. And that's when Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the mind that created it. That's why he worked so hard to free and change the nature of his mind and get away from the serial processor into the parallel processor. He said that the greatest gift that he had been given was the gift of fantasy, which is the gift of our right mind, of our parallel processor, of our hearts. And he said that's where the inspiration came from. Then you use the serial processor to work out the details and give it its shape. That's the craft. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Swayam. Thank you, everyone who shared this evening. Thank you for the questions, the comments. Anything else from anyone before we close? All right, we'll take it up next week. Then alone the whole world, then alone the whole vision will change, and you will stand up and say, how beautiful is good, and how wonderful, full of wonder, is evil. Any final thought from anyone? Anything to add or ask? Okay. Oma Satoma Satkamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya, Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from this place of endless change and relentless noise to thine abode of silence and peace. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being. Until we meet next, which is as early as Saturday, when we study the book Realizing God, or on Sunday, we will take up what was not addressed last Sunday in the talk about Samkhya, the creative energy as expressed by the three gunas. And it's an interesting topic, very, very much an integral part of Bhagavad Gita, as you'll see. Sri Krishna says that it's that which is doing everything. The gunas are the instrument of the one and only doer, and it is the gunas attaching themselves to gunas that produce everything we know, feel, experience. So, any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Good night. Until next time.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
So glad for you, Katrina.
That was beautiful. Thank you.